What is up, IDP Army, Fantasy Football Fanatics? It's your man, Jordan Reigns at 50 Shades of Drunk. This is the IDP Army podcast. Tonight, we're going to jump off the IDP train. We're going to jump onto the soul train that is the quarterback position in Dynasty right now. Going to talk about our top 12. And I say our because I have a surprise guest behind the scenes. And then maybe if you're lucky, we'll give you our top 24, get you all prepped for a little early Dynasty Rankings update. Stick around. It's going to be a great show. As always, want to thank our Patreons. Go check out patreon.com/the IDP Army. Y'all make the show possible. Keep the lights on. Helped us launch the second podcast feed. If you want to do one thing for me, well, you can do two. Like this video. The other thing is go subscribe to the new podcast feed below. And all right, I'm going to bring in our guest. This is my man, Adam. Adam and I met through the BDGE. The Big Dog Bash tournament, where I was formerly undefeated. Now I am a peasant. I have lost. But Adam, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's good, Jordan? Thanks for having me on. What's going on, IDP Army? Appreciate everybody letting me come on and chop it up with you guys. So excited to talk quarterbacks, excited to talk Dynasty as a whole, man. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm with it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, and we I guess we kind of met in the BDGE, but where we really met was in the Big Content Discord.
Right.
We're both in there with Nick and Jack and a whole bunch of other guys talking constantly about creating content, talking about ideas with each other, throwing things, dropping little interesting tidbits in there, talking about different stuff. That's where we kind of connected and thought, hey, let's do a Dynasty video together because we're always dropping. You have a really cool TikTok presence going right now. How's that been going?
Man, it's been interesting. I've had some videos which get a bunch of hits. I got one that's close to 10K, and then I got some that, people just don't like. So I'm just trying to figure out what people like in TikTok and get my niche going there. But yeah, the big content thing is dope. It was really good to meet you there. Obviously, we're both striving to grow our brand and our content. So that's why we said, let's collab and make something fire,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I love hanging out in big content. I love content creation. And, before we jump into the fantasy football of it all, which is what you're all here for, even this thumbnail, is a reflection of some things that I was reading in the chat or heard on the most recent Big Content podcast episode and YouTube video. So if you guys are interested in making content, go check that out. But it was interesting to me that, they were talking about how do you get started in like niching down. And when I think of my niche, I don't know how you look at it, but in my head, I visualize like a dartboard, right? And your niche is a bullseye. It's very small. It's very concentrated. It's very valuable, and then when you're in your niche, that's the most valuable, but there are things around it that are also meaningful. So when you think of a dartboard, there are the pieces that come down, like the slice of the pie. So it's like maybe it's audio editing. That's part of, if you make a podcast, then you're going to have that part of your board. Video editing will become part of it. Even copywriting, writing about your episode. So these things are suddenly part of your niche because they're outlying factors. And when you get enough reps doing one thing, you become more proficient at other things. So that's where, I thought it was most interesting that it's really just about when you get started, you start somewhere small, but you almost by default, just by being in the trenches of content creation, you open yourself up as a creator. And before we jumped into the fantasy football of it all, I wanted to know, like, what were your thoughts on that? And how do you kind of view the niche that you're kind of in? And tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So content creation, man, has been extremely eye-opening for me this year. Mike and I, the guy I do a lot of my work with over at South Harmon, we also do the 40 Chess Show, which is on the Destination Devi Radio. That's how we got started, right? We did a podcast. Ray Garvin, we are Team DD. We're on the Destination Devi team. He put us on, gave us a platform to do a podcast. The start of this calendar year, we were doing a podcast, and I had a shitty-ass laptop. I mean, just literally talking into a mic, right? And it's turned into so much growth and so many different things. You talk about the dartboard. I mean, I'm, doing video editing. Mike does the audio editing. I'm doing thumbnails. I'm trying to do all these different things that I never even knew I would even be trying to do when I started and set out to do a podcast and growing to where I'm at now. You know, some of it's overwhelming, some of it's getting the learning curves and getting the reps, obviously, coming on a show like this, doing content just to grow your audience. Our niche, though, what we're focusing on, I think we do a lot of best ball dynasty content. So dynasty obviously isn't really, it's somewhat of a niche, but to really niche down, so to speak, we're really more into the best ball focused. We do dynasty trades as well. So the trading aspect and also how leagues differ when you talk about like a start 9 league, how that's a shallow starting lineup and how different that can be from a start 13 all the way down to when you're playing best ball and anyone can go in and out of your lineup, your whole roster matters. So there's a lot of different variants that come into the format you're playing. So that's kind of our big focus as a whole.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And like you said, like that's an interesting, niche, and people throw that word around kind of grossly. And I for a while, my name on Twitter was micro niche podcast host because I thought it was just like kind of goofy. But I think it's interesting because when you're doing something, you're learning and you're opening yourself up to making a bigger niche. So one of the questions they had on there was somebody's like, well, what would you start with a niche or would you do sports? My thought was start small, start with sports. That's what IDP, I started with an IDP show. All I got to talk about was defensive players. Every time I come in a thread on Twitter 3 years ago, it's like, oh, it's the IDP guy. Get him out of here, But after 3 or 4 years of doing that and just being around the, fantasy community, now I've been able to work my way into best ball, into dynasty. And now those are niches, on the outside. Those are the outside ring of that niche. And as I'm doing that, I'm also learning other things. So my piece of advice for people, I wanted to talk to you about this again because you're a creator, is just get started and don't be afraid to ask questions. And I will say there's a lot of people that act like they know what they're doing, myself included, and we don't. The best way to learn is to ask somebody. Trust me, if you're doing something a type of way and you figured it out and you're like, oh, I figured it out, I promise you, somebody on your timeline knows how to do it faster and better. And they probably would have told you if you asked them before you had to figure it out your way. So Don't be afraid to reach out. People are more than willing to be helpful. Myself included and Adam included as well.
That's one thing that has been extremely eye-opening for me as well, is like the fantasy community as a whole, man, how receptive. I have not run into anybody that has not been receptive and wanting to help and willing to be a part of it. So it's exciting. Joker, what's up? Jay, what's good, man?
What up, fellas? Mike. What's up? Looks like we got some folks sliding through. I don't recognize these. Don't look at my people.
These are all. Listen, man. You see this right here? This is South Harmon. These are all the shitheads.
That's what's up. Hey, I like that. That's some good branding right there.
Yeah,
shitheads.
Man. And that's South Harmon Fantasy Football. That's our YouTube. That's Mike running that. So that's my guy, Mike.
Nice.
Right there.
Go throw them a sub, y'all. If you're watching this, go throw them a sub, thumbs up, all the goods.
Go hit the sub because I don't know if he's here right now, Jordan. If he's not, he should be, and if he's not, I'll be shocked because he's always wanting us to dive into IDP content, but Mike and I really don't know shit about IDP. So I thought it was a good, merging to get some IDP love in here with Jordan Rains, man. But
what we do,
we're doing more of the quarterbacks today, but Jordan is a really good place to find the IDP information, man.
Today,
we'll have to collab before.
Today we are going to talk about some quarterbacks. Come back. I mean, check out. There's hundreds of videos about IDP players. If you're on the channel and you want to go check one of them out, they're all good because I'd made all of them, so they're pretty good. What's up?
Yeah.
Shitheads. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. And before we get into it, the meat and potatoes of it, I want to know. Have you made a big shift since the season started to now in your rankings, and who has been the biggest mover for you before? And I'll tell you mine. For me, the two guys that have moved the most since the season started are Kyler and Justin Murray, or not Justin Murray, Justin Fields.
Okay, well,
and
all right.
it's Kyler going down, and it's Justin Fields going up.
Okay, well, let me say this: Kyler has gone down for myself. Mike and I, we just had an AMA yesterday where we talked about it. He's moved Kyler down even further than I have. That being said, Kyler is one of the guys that's moved down the most. I mean, there's some guys, when you talk about the Dynasty rankings, though, that have moved significantly for me. Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers have gone down quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I will say Justin Fields actually hasn't gone up as much for us as probably the average person. Because Mike, he's here. He did the video on Justin Fields. We did a player short on him. We've been a lot more in on Justin Fields than everybody else. I have him in my top 12.
Nice.
So I'm very excited and bullish about Justin Fields.
Yeah, I agree. I got him here. I was looking, and I had him before this. This tier 2 ends with my top 12. He was at 13, and I flip-flopped he and Trey Lance last week.
Okay.
And I think that's appropriate because I'm getting more bearish on Trey Lance. But before we get into that, let's just talk about Justin Fields and why he's up here.
Okay.
He doesn't have to be a prolific passer because he's running a way that Lamar was running for a while, but almost better than that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the team that he's with right now, the Chicago Bears, is not very good. What happens when the Chicago Bears as a football team are actually as good as the quarterback who seems to be a playmaker in the making? So I think top 12 is completely justified. If league mates out there are not valuing him like that, they should be. What are your kind of thoughts and takes on Justin Fields? Not even 24 years old yet.
Yeah. I have a lot of them. I could talk all day about Justin Fields.
Spit some game.
All right. So let me say this. When you look at his game log this season, right, you're looking at, and this is going to come out in the newsletter I dropped. I won't give all of it away here, but we do a newsletter every Friday at Destination Devy. If you're watching this and you haven't heard of it, it's literally free. You can go sign up for the Destination Devy newsletter. I'll get the stuff to Jordan if you want to check it out. Just it drops little blurbs of knowledge, and I write in that every week, or Mike does. But for Justin Fields, let's talk about this, for example, right? 9 games. His game log is polar opposites, right? So when you look and you think about the first 4 weeks, this man completed 8 passes, 7 passes, 8 passes, and 11 passes in his first 4 games, all of which he was throwing about 50% completion. He had 2 touchdowns and more turnovers than he had scores, right? At that point, you're seeing how bad the offensive line was. You're seeing how down the weapons are. And people are basically out. They're like getting to the point of, is Justin Fields even going to be the quarterback for the Chicago Bears next year? Like, there's literally that talk because there's a new regime in town, right? And they didn't draft Justin Fields, and they're trying to go the other way. Now, when you think about this, okay, that same situation that sucks, right? Because the last game they played, Claypool was out there, but we haven't seen Fields do that much with Claypool yet. So all the same weapons, all the same offensive line. His next 5 games, his completion percentage has gone up significantly. He has 8 touchdowns versus 2 picks. He's had multiple games where his quarterback rating's over 106. And here's the thing. His 5-game sample size, the rushing floor with that bad team is insane. You can't even call it a floor because right now, Jordan, including the first 4 weeks, so his whole 9 games here, he's on pace to be the second leading rusher in quarterback history with like 1,100 something yards. And then this is a guy that broke the record with 178 last game. And when you think about this is the big difference for me with him versus other Konami code guys. And you kind of touched on it a little bit here, right? When you look at Justin Fields, I think the big difference is this is a athlete that has the ability to take the ball to the house. It's not just a fast quarterback that can run for 15, 20 yards or can get goal line scores a la like a Jalen Hurts type. This is a guy that only Lamar Jackson and him, I think, can take a run that's a pedestrian run and take it to the house and all the way to the score. That's a huge thing in fantasy.
Yeah, he's unique, and it's weird because it feels like sacrilege. And what I'm doing right now, I remember when I did this with Josh Allen, when I would compare him early on to good quarterbacks. I said, like his rookie year, I was like, that was a throw like Mahomes did. And I had to always caveat it because it wasn't okay then. When I see Justin Fields move, and I'm a exercise science major, kinesiology was something I did a lot. When I see Justin Fields move, he moves more fluidly, noticeably more fluidly, in my opinion, than the other 2 guys who are supposed to be the best, and that's Kyler and Lamar. He looks noticeably better. And when you think about that, and then I was looking, look at these rushing numbers. These are obscene. 47, 52, 47, 88, 82, 60, 178. The age of the pocket passer for fantasy purposes, where it's like you could get one of those guys and he would be a mid-range quarterback 1, a la Tom Brady, a la Aaron Rodgers. Those guys are dead because there are too many guys like Justin Fields coming and already here. They fill out that top 6, 7 now. It's not like you're just getting 1 or 2 at the end, where you're getting Colin Kaepernick and Teddy Bridgewater. And these guys aren't Colin Kaepernick and Teddy Bridgewater. You know what I mean? This is Jalen Hurts. This is Justin Fields. This is Josh Allen. He's got the arm of Patrick Mahomes and he runs like Cam Newton. You know what I mean? These guys are different. And the fantasy football landscape, the sooner you adjust, you adapt, and you realize adjust. You know what I mean? This 9-point game in week 4, you'll probably never see a game like that again from Justin Fields at this point. Like, think about that. Like, I know it might be hard to articulate, but we could be looking at something like that. They went and got him a better weapon in Claypool, and they immediately got Claypool involved. They want to run the ball, but again, that opens things up for Justin Fields to continue to be dynamic. So for me, he's top 12. For you, also top 12.
Yep.
I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time talking about the top tier guys, but I do want to say Jalen Hurts was not in on him.
Okay.
I of course corrected. You know what I mean? And I feel
I see you got Burrow here at 3.
I got Burrow pretty high.
You want to talk to the people about Joe Burrow at 3?
I will, because my caveat is, if you're gonna be one of the pocket passers, you have to be, and those guys can exist, and you want to exist in that world as a top 12 guy. You have to be a Tom Brady. You have to be an Andrew Luck. You have to be a Peyton Manning type of quarterback, or Drew Brees. Joe Burrow's got that in him. He can stand in the pocket and win a game. He doesn't have to tuck and run. He can, but he's also got that thing. And it was funny because you saw Cousins the other night, I'm sure, talking to the Manning brothers about that.
Yeah.
And he's like, my coach said the one thing. And Cousins, another guy, he's in my top 12 too. You don't see a lot of pocket passers up here, but Cousins can throw. He can hang in there and he can go down the field.
I still like Cousins too. I think he's oftentimes undervalued.
Yeah, oh, massively. So is Tua. That's why I got him here. He showed me enough. He can hang, and he's got the coach to do it. And I don't think there's going to be a problem for Miami Dolphins to get good players to just keep coming to Miami for the rest of forever. You know what I mean? Like, they are set up. But every other guy up here is basically has some dual threat ability, except for, and even Justin Herbert. So it's Joe Burrow being this high is because I think his ceiling, what we saw last year, was close, but I think there's even more when he really gets everything humming, maybe even with a better coach, and he's got a long career ahead of him, still only 25 years old. So I have him pretty high up here because for me, it's a value of a couple of things. It's playability, but it's also how long I think you're actually going to be a legitimate starter. That's why Kyler's not higher. Yeah, I acknowledge he's a great fantasy quarterback, but I don't think Kyler's going to be a starting NFL quarterback in 3 years, 4 years. He's going to go the route of not Sam Darnold. He's not going to implode that fast, but he's going to go the route of like a Baker Mayfield, where it's like, he's so good. And then suddenly the media is all going to be like, he's not that good anymore. We just need to get Cliff out of the way, and there's no more excuses. Same thing with Carson Wentz. The downfall was best season ever, so efficient, MVP, blah, blah. And then it was like, he's trash. And it was like, he's trash the whole time. It's just nobody would ever go out and say it. I've been low on Kyler for a while. When I watch Kyler play, what he does special on the ground does not compensate for the boneheaded interceptions, the fumbles, the goofy shit he does, and then his overall just general, like, not very good attitude. He doesn't seem like a leader to me. He just seems like a guy playing football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't think he's going to last.
Some of those intangibles are tough to put your finger on, but I'll say this, with him, we talked about this on our trade show. If you're watching this and you're interested in looking at dynasty trades and stuff, you'll be able to. Sorry, I can keep talking.
Sorry, that was me.
You're good, dude.
I'm messing with stuff I shouldn't be messing with.
You're fine. With Kyler, we talked about this on our last trade show, and we've been using a lot of warp data, right? And that's, win over replacement players. The thing is, with Kyler Murray, right? So you have this name insulated value with Kyler Murray right now, but he's not actually offering you warp advantage. So what that really means is he's not actually giving you an edge at the super flex or quarterback spot.
No.
Because
not even close.
The points are not coming for him. And here's the thing, right? You brought up a good point. When you talk about him, so a lot of people talk about him in this second elite tier, right? Obviously not the big three with Allen, Mahomes.
Well, they did until fucking 3 weeks ago. And that's the thing about the fantasy community is you have to, it's days and weeks sometimes where these values change, and you need to be listening and you need to be ahead, folks. Yeah. Because what we're saying now will be common vocabulary and vernacular in 6 weeks. I promise you.
Yes, and it's the most reactionary market I've ever seen by far. And to that point with Kyler, right? Here's the thing. You kind of touched on it. I think you nailed it to an extent. With him, this is the thing, right? So not only are you not getting the warp advantage with Kyler, basically he's not helping you win right now, but on top of that, he's not giving you the longevity certainty. Like, we all know that Kyler Murray was the first overall pick because Cliff Kingsbury came there, right? Arizona's season does not look good. They just lost to Seattle again. If Cliff Kingsbury is gone, here's the thing, the reality. They did get him a contract, so people still had that baked into his value. But if it's a new regime, new coach, and it doesn't go well there, they're not going to want to keep Kyler. And the other thing with Kyler is, like, when you talk about his value the first 2 years and where it's very different and interesting for me this year, those started both the years, his rookie and second year, right? Like, he gave you good points and then he got hurt. Now it's like the dude's healthy supposedly, and he's not giving you anything, and it's still this small frame that runs that we've seen be injured. So, like, for me, I think of the name built-in value guys, Kyler Murray's one that
Brand equity.
Exactly.
You have to sell Kyler. I'm telling you. And the same thing of, like, what I've been saying this on my channel for a while. And if some of my guys are in the chat, they'll probably come for me. But I said his career trajectory will be identical to Carson Wentz's, except it'll be 1 year shorter because he's brown. That's it. It'll be the exact same everything. It'll be 1 year shorter because he's brown. That's it. And it's just what it is. You know, it's kind of the cycle that the NFL sort of goes through with you guys. Again, he does a lot on the ground, sure, but it doesn't make up for the fact that he doesn't do much with his arm or anything special outside of that. And it's his year 4. You know, people are like, oh, give him time. He's a 25-year-old man. You know what I mean? Number 1 overall pick, and they get him a new weapon every 6 months. You know, so he's low for me. Let's talk.
We both moved him down. Yeah, go ahead, Watson. Let's do it.
Still in my top 12 because I think the value is still there. This is a combination of market value and what I foresee. But for me, if I'm being honest, I would rather have Kirk Cousins on my team. I would much rather have Justin Fields on my team. You know, even some of these guys a tier lower, but because of his value, I have to leave him here, you know, in our top 12 kind of. What are your thoughts on Deshaun Watson? I feel like he's massively undervalued right now market-wise because we haven't seen him play in so long, but still only 27 years old. He's kind of Josh Allen before he went off the market. You know, he was that next up and coming guy behind Patrick Mahomes. Last time we really saw him, you know, performing, he was, you know, had the Chiefs on skates in the playoffs, right? They were down like 5 scores. Yeah. This is a prolific player we haven't seen play football in a while, who's about to have an incredible head coach, who's about to have an incredible organization behind him. Yeah, he's got some dicey stuff in his background, but at 27 years old with a fresh start, you know, for me, he's right outside of tier 1. You can see here. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if I have him in tier 1 and maybe even a smidge ahead of Jalen Hurts in the next 2 to 3 months. But what are your thoughts on Watson, and how are you approaching him right now in Dynasty?
Yeah, so I think earlier in the year, right, in the offseason, because we talk about all the time on our channel how rigid contenders are and how much more flexible rebuilders are, right, and what your direction is and picking a direction. So in the beginning, if you're a contender, holding Watson, unless you were constructed really well with quarterbacks, was going to be troublesome for you. But his value, I think, was down then. The Browns are done with their bye. They have 3 games left before Watson comes back, right? They're and if you can tell in the background, I'm a Browns person. I live here in Akron. I'm a Cleveland guy, so I'm paying a lot of attention. And they have 3 games coming up. They play at Miami, at Buffalo, home versus the Tampa Bay Bucks, and then Watson's back, happens to be in Houston the following week. The thing with him is this: they're going to be 5 wins, 4 wins at most when he comes back. And for them to get to the playoffs, it's going to have to be on the back of number 4. He has Amari Cooper, and Njoku going down does suck. But this is a team that can run the ball with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's on pace for like 1,800 rushing yards with Jacoby Brissett, right? Like, you add him to this offense, and we saw even his last year in Houston, right? He was great his second to last year in Houston, where they went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. They're up 24-0. They end up losing. But the second that last year in Houston, they didn't have any weapons. He was still fantasy relevant. This situation's much better than that Houston team. I'm very excited for him. I have him currently at quarterback 5. I think that's actually interesting because I think that's where you had him. But to me, he's already I'm already ranking him as if he's playing today because it's only 3 weeks. And I think the reality is for most people, if you've held Watson to this point, you ain't selling light. Those days are over.
No way. No. If you have him in Dynasty, people have been trying to get him from me for a while. I have him in 1 league. And when I do activate him, finally, it's going to be the best feeling in the world because I've held this long, you know, and you're not getting it from me. I went through the dark days. Justin Herbert seems to be having kind of a weird year this year. What's your sort of Justin Herbert take? And before we do that, I just want to highlight, you know, Deshaun Watson, someone we consider a rushing quarterback. You know, when you even compare his numbers to Justin Fields' last few weeks, they look like kid numbers, you know?
Yeah.
30, 38, 50, 36, 36, 24, 38, 38, 25. And this is our this was the guy, before this was the next rushing quarterback guy before, after Lamar, and we've missed him for 2 years. And now Justin Fields is out here he's snatching souls quietly. And I think we're kind of catching on. I will say the flip side of that is Lamar is packing those in with 300 plus yard games, but Justin Fields could get there.
Yeah. I think, see, the thing with Watson is, when you look at this, right, he's more of like a tactical scrambler. Like, he's not normally looking for designed runs or anything. Now, if everyone's covered and he sees an opening, he will run on you. So it's like almost like a Patrick Mahomes type stuff where he's going to tactically scramble, but juiced up. He's better. He's faster at running the football. I think the other thing with Deshaun Watson is he has an elite level arm talent. So he's not just a tactical scrambler. He's a great passer. Prolific, I believe. So I'm very in on Watson. With Fields, obviously, there's a little more concern with the passing and not having a contract. But the thing with him is he has upside as a rusher that we're seeing that almost nobody possesses. And even Lamar, who's a great rusher, like the way this offense is built with the guys down, like he's not getting off on the ground like we've seen in the past before, too.
Exactly. And the thing is, when Justin Fields runs, it's like he always runs for like 12 or 15 yards, and then he just like falls over like it wasn't even a big deal.
Now, with you asked about Herbert, though, so let me say this. Herbert's a very interesting one, right?
So what's up with him? Like, what is QB 14 feels kind of weird.
This one here is a conundrum. We actually have a trade show dropping. It's premiering on Saturday. He's the thumbnail. He's been featured in 2 deals. Justin Herbert, for the first time in a long time, probably since his rookie year, is actually attainable, right? Because what's happening is this. I'm actually all in on the talent and everything that Justin Herbert is, but you had Keenan Allen, who's had a lot of injuries in the past, get hurt and has not been playing football. Then Mike Williams gets hurt and is playing football. If you go back and watch him last week, I mean, he throws the ball right at Josh Palmer's head and hands, and it bounces straight off the man's hands, straight up in the air for a pick. His situation's not great. His offensive line's not good. I'm totally in on Justin Herbert long term. I think the problem with him is this. You are expecting him, because ADP in the summer, based on Adico, they track ADP in Superflex leagues, he was actually going as quarterback too. So people were drafting him ahead of Patrick Mahomes. And now he's giving you quarterback 14 numbers. And as a contender, even if you love Justin Herbert, you're not confident week to week he's going to give you points. You look there, he's got a 9-point performance. That's what we
16.
saw from Justin Fields, right? Like 15 that last game. So there's a lot of concern on the contender side with him, and people are basically foregoing the fact that he does have this great dynasty outlook for someone that's going to smash for them today. I still have him as quarterback 3 in my rankings, but I'll say this.
Love it.
Very in on Justin Herbert, but I'll say this. If you're a contender, I am perfectly and happily pivoting 1-for-1 to Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Hell, right now I'd probably even do it for Watson. Those guys especially I would pivot off of Herbert for. Outside of that, man, I wouldn't do it unless I'm getting a plus.
I agree. I think he's a little bit undervalued. I've noticed that the sentiment around him just in general has been a lot quieter. And that's just because the team overall is struggling, but still only 24 years old. One of the younger top-end quarterbacks, still a whole year younger than Joe Burrow. Right. And actually has a whole full year playing football more than Joe Burrow, right? So
yeah, and he also listen, and I like Burrow. I do. I really do like Burrow. But the thing about Herbert is, man, like I do see Herbert as a guy that has more of a rushing floor than does Joe Burrow. Now, I'll give you this. Like, as we see, the weapons in L.A. are scary, whereas Chase and Higgins are dope as hell for Cincy. So there's no question on the weapons right now.
Jocko says, bold take, Kyler not a starter in 3 years. I mean, he might start the year as a starter in 3 years.
I would say it's a bold take, but I don't think there's anything wrong with making bold takes. We make bold takes all the time. It keeps it entertaining.
He's a bum.
He has not been good this year, man. He has not been. There's no way around it.
Get him out of here. All right. So let's get to some of the juicier names. And like I said, this is an update show, y'all, for the podcast and the channel. This is not by any means a thorough. We're not going to break down every single guy. We don't have end-of-season stats, but I wanted to hop on here with my man Adam and just kind of see where our heads are at based on some of the things we've said.
Yeah.
Curious that I'm ready to keep scrolling down, and we haven't talked about Tua. Before we talk about this back half, these quarterback twos, What is your Tua take, and where did you have him ranked before the season started? I think I had him at like quarterback 14 or 15 in redraft. In Dynasty, I know I moved him up right before the season a little bit too, but I've kept him pretty high since he came in the league. But what is your kind of take on him, and is he going to keep going up for you?
Yeah, well, so yes. Here's what I'll say. We've been Mike and I have been very in on Tua, much more so than the average person. If you remember in startups this offseason, there was basically a tier one of quarterbacks that people were very comfortable drafting players at, and some of those guys included like Aaron Rodgers and even Kirk Cousins at times. And not saying Kirk Cousins isn't great, but Aaron Rodgers is not. Like Matthew
No.
Stafford certainly was somebody that people felt great about. Matthew Stafford looks horrible. That offensive
Yeah.
line looks terrible. Outside of Cooper Kupp, if Cooper Kupp didn't play, Matthew Stafford would be in big
Oh
time
yeah.
trouble.
He
And
would be.
also, Matthew Stafford has a midweek concussion, which is wild as hell to me. So he's fallen significantly. But my point is, there was basically a cutoff when all those guys were gone. Then it was like, okay, I'm going to take Tua. And it didn't feel sexy for anybody. People didn't really want to draft Tua because they hadn't seen him play well. He had injury history, right? This was the thing for us. Tua was very effective and efficient as a passer. He's incredibly accurate. Now, when you think about what made Tua great, right? What made Tua great in college? The fact that he's so damn accurate, he doesn't really want to push the ball downfield to guys in contested catch situations, right? His rookie season, you got Devontae Parker, you got Preston Williams. These guys don't separate. They separate by going and catching the ball up higher. Tua wants to throw the ball, like in Alabama, to guys running wide the hell open, and he will put the ball right on their number. And if you look at what they've done, very heavy analytics GM over there has basically continued to utilize the fact that he's on a rookie deal and get weapons there. So Jalen Waddle, right? They went against their analytics to go up and grab him, his teammate, right? And then this year, they made that trade for Tyreek Hill. So now you have two guys that are incredibly fast that can't be covered one-on-one, and they're running open, and Tua is successful as hell because of it. And then if you start doubling them, he will check the ball down. Here's the thing about Tua. If you like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, which is almost everybody in Dynasty, how can you not like the guy who's throwing them the football?
Bingo. I agree. 100%. And Mike McDaniels is everything that people tried to tell us that Brandon Staley was going to be. You know
That's
what I
true.
mean? Like, he's an actual guru. He's an actual like genius. And I think his genius will last a little longer even than Sean McVay's. I think we've been seeing the cracks in Sean McVay's genius here recently. And I think it's curious that he's talking about walking away from the team as soon as the going gets tough. So whatever.
They kept kind of pushing out to the future to win, and they got the win, and now you're seeing how bad everything.
Now he's going to retire at, was he 36?
That's
Belichick's out
crazy,
here,
man. It's crazy.
Wheelchairing onto the field, and Sean McVay's like, I'm retired from coaching. I went to 2 Super Bowls.
Belichick's out
anyway,
here
I'll
coaching
stop
no matter what.
Sean
Yeah,
McVay
but I mean, Tua for me, here's
he's
the thing,
still a
right?
value, right?
He probably is a value in most of your leagues. I'll say this. What's really interesting is then you had, okay, look at the progression of Tua Tagovailoa. So he has some slower games, and he had that incredible comeback versus Baltimore. You got the game log up right here, right?
Yep.
So week 1, he was just pedestrian. Week 2, he comes back versus Baltimore. Unbelievable comeback. Now, here's the crazy part, right? Then week 3 versus Buffalo, not great. And then, you had the whole concussion thing and everything coming in with that game, and then the Cincinnati game, same thing, right? But here's what's interesting. People said with the Baltimore game, it's one game. He's really not that good. It was just a game in negative game script, and it's fluke. Even if you think it's fluke, all right? Him having 6 touchdowns and 469 yards. Jordan, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you know how many quarterbacks last year had 469 yards and 6 touchdowns in a passing game?
Probably
all last year.
All of last year, I would say, if at all, it was one. It was probably Josh Allen in the game against the Chiefs.
So here's the thing. Joe Burrow actually threw for like 500 yards in one of those games. So he threw more than 469, but he didn't throw 6 touchdowns. Nobody did them combined. Nobody threw 6 touchdowns at all last year. Burrow had a 500-yard passing game. Incredible game by him. But the point is, so if you go last year, the year prior, the whole season, and you talk about who threw that much, like even if you think it's fluke, the fact that he can throw that much should show you a ceiling that people said he didn't have. right?
Known ceiling. I talk about that a lot. The guys talk about this could happen or that could happen. I'm like, when a guy shows you who he is, when he says, I have a 50 point, look, now we know Tua, anything under 56.86 in this league is a possibility any given time. He's
So,
shown that.
so here's what's crazy though, Jordan, right? His value kind of went up again, and then we talked about how it's the most reactionary dynasty out there. Then you had the next game, he has the concussion, then obviously the short week, concussion again. People are freaking the hell out. Jordan, this guy's value was like everybody just I want out. I want no part of this. He may retire. People panic like crazy, and I said, I understand it's scary, but at the prices that I'm seeing, I'm willing to buy. Problem was I already had crazy shares of Tua.
I need to get him. I need to get him on some teams. I don't have enough exposure. I had a couple of dynasty leagues used on. I'm not in those ones anymore, for whatever reason. I need to go acquire him. He, Justin Fields are both guys that are on my list. I think Joe Burrow is actually it's a good time to go look for him too.
I would agree with you.
Because with Chase being down and them, I think that just lowers people's overall hype meter or whatever you want to call it. But let's talk about some of these back end quarterback twos or mid-range quarterback twos. So I have Zach Wilson here. I have him at 20, 12, so it's be 13, 14. I have him at 15, and he's in this group of guys with Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, to the top of my tier 3, young guys all in their second, third years on the field. And I like what I've been seeing out of Zach Wilson. I like the coaching with the Jets. I mean, they just beat the Bills, which I said on the show, like that's no small feat. Like that cannot go. You can't state that enough. Like this is not your typical Jets team. Like this is a legitimately good football team on offense and on defense and with coaching. And you cannot discount what a quarterback does for that, and he hasn't had the best receiving core. He hasn't had the easiest ride, of anybody. But to have a New York team that has high expectations and those expectations are expected to be dashed, for them to actually be, again, getting a dub over the Bills, I had to reevaluate kind of what I think about Zach Wilson as a player, just because he kind of doesn't fit into that mold of some of these sexier guys we've been talking about. He's not 6'4", 6'5", 250. He's built a little bit more like a Kirk Cousins type, a Kyler Murray type, a little bit smaller, a little bit different, more of a pocket passer. So maybe a Drew Lock, maybe even. So the guys that we see in my head, at least, that come into the league kind of like him, haven't been successful. But what do you think about Zach Wilson? I have him in this tier with some guys I think you're going to get a few more years out of. Some of them, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers. I think we maybe have one more if we're lucky. But these guys could easily move up a tier, and I think Zach Wilson might be another guy to consider looking at. What are your thoughts on Zach Wilson? He's on the thumbnail, ladies and gentlemen. We love Zach Wilson.
Hey, and listen, man, you nailed it. My guy Mike, he has a shirt, throwing bombs and banging moms. We did a thumbnail with some Zach Wilson stuff, so I really was enjoying the thumbnail. It worked out perfect for us hopping on here. Let me say this though, with Zach Wilson, obviously having the injury in the offseason, in the preseason, essentially starting his year slow, I think that wasn't good for his value. But then he's come back, and here's the thing with him, right? I like Zach Wilson. I've been more in on Zach Wilson than the average person. A lot of people, I think, they just don't believe the talent actually is there, and they think he's kind of propped up just by draft capital and having a landing spot and being the second overall pick. Here's the thing with him, right? He's been very kind of inconsistent. And the one game where they lost versus New England was the one time he showed, I guess, some fantasy upside because he had 355 yards, but he also had 3 picks and he had under 50% completion. They are doing a very good job in New York. And I love Garrett Wilson, right? But Elijah Moore, I don't even understand what's going on with him. The fact that he doesn't have targets at all. Breece Hall going down. But the thing is with Zach Wilson, in the appropriate range, I'm still willing to take the shot because the landscape of quarterback is so bad. But I would like to, for the rest of the year coming out of the bye, like to see him a little more unleashed. Like when you look at his pass attempts right now, like they basically really want to just run the football down your throat and play really good defense with that front four. And then Zach Wilson's kind of hidden. And I would like to see more of him uncorked and unleashed at times because right now I like the talent. I don't know. I haven't seen enough to really know how to appropriately value him. I think by default you have to have him in the tier that you're talking about. For me, I have Zach Wilson at quarterback 18. And here's the thing. I think in that jumbled tier you have, there's a reality of what are you doing with your team? If you're rebuilding, I think Zach Wilson is a guy I want to get. If you are a contender, it sucks, man. Like Russell Wilson, you have below. Like, but if I can make a pivot 1-for-1, Zach Wilson to Russell Wilson on a contender, I would do that. So I think here you're kind of just playing the landmines of what's happened and trying to see if you can get the guy who's going to be better for your team on the contending side. I like Zach Wilson long term. I'm still in on the talent. I'm worried though on the points per game what the rest of the year it looks like.
Yeah, I think this year you're not going to get a whole lot out of him. What I do, and I will just point to, their drafts have not been, they haven't been great at bringing in offensive talent. I mean, they brought in Denzel Mims, who everybody in Dynasty and Devi love, but he's garbage.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson is going to be good and has been, all right, but not a lot of time on the field together. And then Elijah Moore, that's just like a weird thing. Then they've been bringing in, ever since I've been playing fantasy, the Jets have 2 new running backs a year. Every single year they get 2 new running backs. This year's no different. Again, we got a new one last year, Michael Carter. Then we bring in James Robinson. They always have, and the thing with them is their offensive pieces, they never get to really develop together and kind of build together. They focus on the defense. Big Q, Quentin Williams is looking awesome. The linebackers are looking good. Their edges, Carl Lawson's coming on for them, etc. What they really
Sauce
need
Gardner
now,
looks like a stud too.
Oh yeah, Sauce Gardner's a stud, and that's what Robert Saleh does. I think Zach Wilson has shown enough to be an engine. He needs to, he's been banged up and they have some weird stuff going on. Get rid of Corey Davis, get rid of Denzel Mims, just like clean house.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get him the guys that, he needs.
Yeah.
And let's have that let's have that Tua kind of step up. Like, let's surround him with a Tyreek Hill. And, they brought in CJ Uzama.
Right.
But they're throwing the ball to Tyler Conklin, so that the offense.
And Conklin's having a nice little season. He's had a couple down weeks lately.
No, he's a beast, and I brought him up because I love Conklin. I picked him up in the bash. He was one of the guys that helped me get to that
nice.
7-0 status.
Good pickup. Yeah.
He's a beast. But I brought him up because, to me, that shows that their offensive identity still hasn't been defined. They brought in both those guys, and the fantasy community, I know, was much more in on Uzama. But look, it's Conklin who's having the better season. And then, so when I think that they get those guys to actually link up, Breece Hall, and then they, Wilson, when those guys hit, I think you're going to want to have been in on Zach Wilson now versus later. So that's kind of why I still have him ranked pretty high.
I agree with you there, and I think it really does suck that we lost Breece because he was becoming a feature, unbelievable back until that ACL tear.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, that's tough business, but I like Zach because he's 23. He's young. He's got a stud of a coach. He's in a good, situation. It seems like the Jets are in a good situation for the first time since I started watching football. They just need to get him his pass catching weapons and, and get them all synced up, linked up. The Elijah Moore stuff has been weird. I'm sure that's been hard to deal with, etc. But I love Zach Wilson, and he's a guy that I've risen on a little bit this offseason. I want to touch on Jared Goff. 28 years old. He was the number 2 overall pick the year he came in. I picked him up at a lot of Devi this year, or not Devi, Best Ball this year. Because he was so cheap. And I think that Jared Goff's going to play football a lot longer than people think he is. People want to lump him in with I don't even know who they want to lump him in with. Just guys that aren't very good. I think he's a little better than he gets credit for. And I think part of that is earlier we were talking about the perspective thing. Was the Sean McVay thing. It was like you're either team Sean McVay or you're team Jared Goff. And of course, everybody loves Sean McVay, and he's winning and all that. But it's like Jared Goff might be in the NFL well after Sean McVay retires. You know what I mean? He's not having a bad year. So for me, I have him in this tier, and he's a guy that I don't want him to be like my quarterback 1.
Right.
But I mean, what Matthew, and if there was a guy who's going to be one of those pocket passers that can move up another tier, it's going to be Jared Goff. He did get some good weapons this year. The team's coaching's not the best. It's still Detroit. I don't have any, machinations that he's going to be playing in Detroit too much longer. But I will say if he ended up somewhere like the Steelers or somewhere, I don't know, just somewhere that had some things going for them, Jared Goff he's going to be a reliable, decent starter in the NFL for a while. And I think in Dynasty, he's a name that at 28 years old, he's the exact same age, essentially, as Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So a little bit undervalued, a guy that I think has really done a lot for his career this year. Actually, here at a third plus. I need to do some updating on my values, guys. I
You're
think
good, man. I was doing some upgrading on my rankings over here too. I got a lot of upgrading
dude,
updating to do on my
yeah,
rankings.
you don't realize
It's a
how far you
grind.
are behind until you kind of get in there and you start looking at everybody. And I got a whole thing just like this for defense too, and every other offensive player. So
I
it's
love
a
it, man.
constant. It's a constant. It's like a second brain. You know what I mean? Except you got to move your own neurons around.
Yeah, and well, what's nice about it though is it forces you to sit down and take everything up here and make sure it all works out and
Yep.
how does it look on paper. And
Yep.
I did that process today really to fine tune everything before I came on here. And I'll say this. Jared Goff for me, especially like you mentioned on best ball, I think knowing your league format here is very key for Jared Goff. Now, if I'm in a start 9, start 10 lineup league, like I'm not saying I won't roster Jared Goff, but I don't want him to be a top 2 quarterback for me in that format. If I'm playing in a best ball league, I am very interested on Jared Goff. And I'll say this, Mike and I both kind of agree with your sentiment that Jared Goff's been better than we expected this year, right?
Look at his passing yards. And
Now
this,
he had those 2 games there, I think sandwiched around the bye, which were pretty bad. I'll say this though,
5-5, yeah. But on the
now
other side of those, though, he
he's
didn't have
had a
touchdown
lot of
those
great
games.
games, and in best ball, you love seeing this, right? Now, here's the thing with Jared Goff. You made a great point, right? He's the former number 1 overall pick. That carries weight, and I think one thing that my rankings forced me again to see is when I did my rankings, you're like, when I get past about quarterback 2021, like it is gross, man. It is gross. And I think what that
Oh,
really
yeah.
should signal
Half
is
of them
that
won't be there in a year or two.
exactly. And what that should really signal is what? The landscape is so bad that when you look at Jared Goff, he even if you don't like him, he's going to go to another team as a starting quarterback because what are we seeing right now? Look at guys that are starting right now, man. Jimmy G, no one said was going to start again. Marcus Mariota starting, right? Andy Dalton is starting yet again for the New Orleans Saints. There are going to be a team that says, you know what? Jared Goff has former first-round pedigree. He's had good statistical years. We don't have anything else to do. Look, the Colts are starting Sam Ehlinger, for God's sakes. Jared Goff will be a starter probably again, as much as I don't think he's necessarily going to help an NFL team win. For fantasy, I'm interested in him.
This is driving me insane because I'm from Missouri, St. Louis Rams. So boo Jared Goff, boo LA Rams, all that. And boo Jared Goff's just a goofy motherfucker.
Jeff Fisher.
But I'm also a massive, massive fan of the underdog, okay? And you guys know that because I've been riding with Cousins since 2015, okay? And people finally caught on that he's a dog. I took him taking his shirt off, flexing his dad bod and the chains, whatever, okay? I'm starting to stand for Jared Goff on that level, and it's frightening because I don't like Jared Goff. He's goofy, but it's like I can't ignore when I watch him play football and some of the games that he's been in. People forget Sean McVay doesn't play football. You know what I mean? Like Sean McVay didn't play his way to the Super Bowl. Sean McVay didn't go toe for toe on Monday Night Football against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. You know what I mean? Yeah, he called the plays, but he didn't throw that ball. I mean, he didn't go shot for shot against Patrick Mahomes. This goofy ass motherfucker right here did that. Okay, easy to forget. Okay, just because of the narratives that come around the NFL. Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old right now, and somebody watching this, drafted him as your quarterback 1. If you could get 10 years, think about that. Jared Goff playing at the level he's playing at like right now, quarterback 15, he's massively undervalued in Dynasty. He's not going away. What else is Jared Goff going to do? He's not going to be a personal trainer. He's not going to go be
he's got a bad bitch though.
All he does,
he could just ride off in the sunset with that, but he's not going to because he can still play. He
plays football. That's what Jared Goff does.
Right.
Just like my dog Case Keenum, who we also stand for around here. Love Case Keenum. Give Case Keenum a starting job. But just want to say, undervalued in Dynasty, and he is in my top 24 pretty securely. And like you said, and this needs to get a little bit of an update because I think, and he's not in my top 24, but I think Geno Smith needs to be in that conversation.
That's funny. I just put him to 24, man, today.
I was going to say, you were talking about those guys that are right outside where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like he's that first guy where it's like he's like that, but like he's really good right now. So I want him in that tier where it's like he's not expendable right now in Dynasty. Like, don't look at him like that. And it's funny because I have him on a team right now that I picked him up last year on, And he got me through some tough times. And I remember
Yeah.
holding on to him and thinking there might be something here. Glad I did. He's a little lower on my rankings now. I'm going to bring him up. But what kind of dynasty ceiling do you see for a Geno Smith? Let's say things keep going well and they keep him around and they try to build around him and he's already doing pretty good. What if we upgrade Tyler Lockett? What if Pete, says, you know what? Here's a young, better guy or something. What if? The only constant is change, okay? And Geno Smith is showing that he can play football. Now, can this get better? That's the question. And if it does, what does that mean for Dynasty?
So this one here is one of the most fascinating things to talk about, right? Because Geno Smith, here's the thing about him, right? He's old enough. What is he, 32? Yeah, 32, right? So this is a guy that we've seen have basically no fantasy success in a long time. As Geno Smith likes to say, everybody wrote me off and he ain't right back, right? Like, it's the truth. But here's the thing. Let's talk about Seattle and how crazy Seattle is, right? Seattle, they went to Russell Wilson. When you think about what their team was successful with, it was the fact that Russell Wilson, as great as he was a fourth-round rookie that was paid nothing. And what could they do and what did that afford them? The ability to pay Marshawn Lynch, to have a good offensive line, to have offensive weapons, and ultimately the LOB, the Legion of Boom, right? That was all afforded because you had a quarterback we hadn't paid nothing. Russell Wilson was being paid nothing those first 4 years of his contract. Geno Smith right now, even playing as well as he is, isn't costing them much, right? They don't have a lot paid to the quarterback position. I'll be interested to see because they have, Denver's first-round pick. And Denver right now is very scary. So that might be a position where they have Denver's first-round pick. They have their first-round pick, whether it's mid to late. They make the playoffs. They could package that and go up and get their guy if they want to choose to do so because that still would be cheap. That would be the one thing for me that would be interesting with Geno Smith. But the way he's playing, he honestly he's so fascinating because of this. Right now, if you have him on a contender, like in a best ball league, even anywhere, like you're not going to move him. He is going to put more points on your team today than he's ever going to value in like dynasty draft picks. Like no one's probably sending a first for Geno Smith, So you're better off just riding him on a contender. And for a rebuilder, it's hard because he's worth something to a contender, but they don't want to pay you for it. So he's one of the most fascinating assets. I think right now on a contender, he could help people win fantasy championships. The future is just so hard to predict because what happens after this year, and we have not really seen guys that have been in the league this long and then had a resurgence this strong that he never had before at 32. He's a conundrum.
Yeah, he's interesting. The lucky thing is he's a quarterback, so if he does, he could piece together a 3, 4, 5 year run here. Curious, just play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
We got a 33-year-old Russell Wilson out here just shit in the bed, QB 21. We got a 28-year-old Jared Goff, quarterback 15, former number 1 overall pick or number 2, I forget, whatever. And a fourth rounder who everyone is realizing is fake and probably not a very nice guy behind the scenes.
Very goofy dude, man.
Yeah, that's the nice way to say it. I call it fake.
The whole thing I'm with you. Go ahead though.
Who do you want in Dynasty? Let's have a candid conversation. Let's say you have to lock one of these guys in for the next 3 years to your Dynasty team. Would you rather lock in Jared Goff or Russell Wilson?
Russell Wilson.
For real. So you would rather have Russell Wilson from 33 through 36 than Jared Goff through 28 through 31.
And I'll tell you why.
I'm listening.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Even if, and I think you could probably make the case, I'm sure you have a very good case for Jared Goff as far as the player. Here's what I will say. For me in Dynasty, because it's Dynasty and because a lot of Dynasty is about trading, Russell Wilson will always carry a name, and he has a bag because he's fake and he already got him to pay him. There's no potential out on his deal until 2026, right? So you got a name that is, whether you like him or not, it's a name, Russell Wilson. Jared Goff is going to probably go into a situation where he doesn't have a contract. He doesn't have a bag. He doesn't have the same appealing name. And I think that here's the thing. Russell Wilson, one, could have better days ahead. We were seeing him be really bad this year, and it's not going to shock me if he plays bad this long for the whole entire remainder of his career. But he has security that I think I can trade to somebody for more than I can Jared Goff. So that would be my argument. Not even necessarily anything on the field.
That's a fair argument, but again, I want to circle back. If you had to lock one of them into your roster, no trades, no fucking around. It's just this guy is the guy that is going to be on your team for the next 3 years, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. I will still say this one becomes a lot closer, and I'll still lean Russell Wilson, because I also think this. Russell Wilson is in a situation where he has some pass catching weapons. They have the team built around him. With Jared Goff, like, here's the thing. I think right now in Detroit, he's got a lot of weapons he can throw to. They're in a lot of negative game scripts, which builds well for fantasy. Like, if he goes to a bad situation, Jared Goff can't survive that. So like, I also think he could end up going to a decent situation. It's just a lot more. It's a lot more stable with Russell Wilson. It's a lot more scary with Jared Goff.
Here's my thing. I just feel like, if you took, and this is what I told you before the show started, where I might end up just being like pushing back a little bit.
I'm all for it, man. Push.
And this is just these are machinations that are happening in real time. But I feel like if I dropped Jared Goff onto the Broncos, they're a better team than they are with Russell Wilson. And
that could very well be true.
And as I look at this schedule down the stretch here for Jared Goff, I mean, there's a chance to turn this narrative around. I mean, they get Chicago. Okay, they're hot right now. So if they beat Chicago this week, it's different than if they beat Chicago 3-4 weeks ago. Okay, that could start a little momentum. They just beat Green Bay. New York Giants are rolling. Okay, they're not necessarily a great team, though. You could win that game. In Buffalo, we just saw Buffalo get beat by the Jets. Now, we just said the Jets' offense wasn't great. Their defense was all right, whatever. Part of the reason I think the Bills may have lost that game, too, is because, like, it's the Jets. We're going to win. They could slip up again. And then all of a sudden, I'm just saying, there's a world where Jared Goff, the value of Jared Goff, the narrative around Jared Goff, the security of Jared Goff in a year to 2 years could be, and I'm just, could be higher than Russell Wilson's based on just kind of the whirlwind of things that could happen and the amount of press that is happening around that team, etc. So I just thought I think that was an interesting question, a fun question.
Let me give you one. I won't push back too much because, like, I think it's a bold take, but I also think, like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong. Like, if they win some of those games, Buffalo, also keep in mind, I think part of the reason they lost too was Josh Allen's holding his arm. He's got the UCL injury.
That was the last play. That was the second to last play, though. He was 100% before that.
I get you, but I'm just saying that injury, more so than the game prior, is going to potentially be bothersome versus the Detroit Lions in Week 12. Now, here's what I will say too: the Lions, the one thing that's baked in is the Rams are playing very bad, and we talk about how bad Matthew Stafford is and stuff. They have their first-round pick this year. So they're in a similar situation with Seattle where they have those 2 first-round picks to go get whatever quarterback they want, even if their pick's not positioned to do that themselves. So very interesting debates.
Man, that would just be crazy. Like, I could just see a scenario where, like, Jared Goff ends up on, like, the Cardinals, you know what I mean? And Kyler gets moved off somewhere, or even I wouldn't mind him being in black and yellow, straight up and down, after some of the shit I've seen happen in black and yellow.
So you're listen. First of all, we got a Browns guy and a Steelers guy here. Now, my dad's a Steelers fan, so I'm a little more amicable to the Steelers guys than most. But let me say this: you're not a Pickett guy. Let's transition to that.
I want to be a Pickett guy. How about that?
Because I see where your rankings have him. You don't want to be a Pickett guy. You got him sandwiched between Aaron Rodgers, who's about to be 39, and you're ready to write off, and Jimmy G, who we don't know. It's the same different situation.
It's a tier thing. I could, if I could move him here.
Okay, all right. If you're saying that whole tier is equal, I'm with you. I get you.
I think value-wise, I think because Aaron Rodgers, you have a limited time. Kenny Pickett, you have more time for that to be a maturing asset, but we don't really know. We know Rodgers will go down. We don't know Pickett will go up, but right now it's like you could, that's kind of where I view him.
Okay. Are you like encouraged at all with what you've seen on the field, or are you more so like, I need to see more? Where are you at with him as a player?
Look, I'm a Steelers fan, and we're going through some things, okay? Everybody is. Tomlin's going through some things. He doesn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback anymore for the first time in forever, okay? Claypool is, and Juju be talking outside their mouth about, it's nice to have coaches that know what's going on offense. And I stand for Mike Tomlin. I will till the day I die. He's a great coach.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've seen Mike Tomlin have to go through this process. He brought in Trubisky, not working out well. Dobbs, not working out well. Mason Rudolph. And you could say this started 2 years ago, okay? Not working out well. Kenny Pickett, not working out well. So I don't know what that really means for Kenny Pickett. I've seen things I like from him on the field. Like, I like the way that he wants to play, but I don't know. I don't think anyone has taken him aside yet and said, you are the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback. And that job is yours for the taking, but you got to take it, okay? You got to start throwing the ball that way, not that way, not at a 45-degree angle. We throw 90-degree angles around here. That's what Big Ben did. And you just hope it goes where it needs to. If it doesn't, the defense will get it back and we do it again. You cannot Najee this bullshit. You can't do that. We let Big Ben do that because he earned the right to do that because he threw it down the field sometimes too. You gotta fucking, and that's how this team runs. And it's almost like from a cultural standpoint, again, as a Steelers fan, I don't know if anyone's told him, like, you have to take this job by the fucking balls. We're giving you this opportunity. You know what I mean? I don't think he'll have this opportunity long. That doesn't mean he won't be a good quarterback or not, but I don't think Tomlin's going to try to make it work if it doesn't start clicking soon. So I'm a little worried about him. And I think in a quarterback market in the NFL where guys move a little bit more, Cousins could become available soon. Winston could be available soon. Guys that will throw vertical, and then Tomlin can just say, just do something, and then I'll do what I do, and I can just be a good coach. I think he wants to get back to that. So I don't know if anyone's pulled Pickett aside and said, like, this is on you more than you realize. So I think that's just kind of how the Steelers work. I don't know. Does that make sense? You're a Browns guy. So you probably have watched.
No, I mean, listen, I'm pretty tapped in with Pittsburgh and the way they've run things. I think, to me, the one thing that I'm excited about for Pickett is I've seen him play really well at times, and I think that offensive line's bad. I think that Najee Harris's foot clearly is not right. He looks terrible. I think there's a lot of things going against Pickett, and like you said, Tomlin's for the first time in his career in a position where they have to retool some things. But if you look at the way they've run stuff, the way Tomlin, since he's been there, what have they done? They constantly use draft capital not to go upgrade Big Ben, to upgrade the rest of the team. And I think they've already used a first-round pick into Kenny Pickett. They were able to sit there. They didn't have to move up. They knew they could sit there at 20, take Kenny Pickett. I think that Kenny Pickett has some weapons around him. They need to improve the offensive line, and they need to get back to getting, the jersey right there, TJ Watt on the field, making that defense prominent again. And I think if they retool around him, I think that Kenny Pickett can be a very decent quarterback in fantasy. And I'll say this too. He's, to your point, like, I think he's a little more mobile than people give him credit for. If you go look at his rushing stats, they're not as bad as people think. He had two rushing scores his first game. He had like 7 carries for 37 the last game. He's not a Konami code type athlete, but he can run the football and give you a few extra points with his legs.
And that's where I will say that was when I noticed, that was the first time I kind of looked at Tomlin different, was when I'm going to start Mr. Trubisky. Okay, great. Like, I've seen Mr. Trubisky with Matt Nagy and bullshit. Like, he can be okay enough.
Yeah.
But what does Trubisky do? Trubisky got a little bit of shuffle in him too. He can run for first downs. When I saw Tomlin literally never design a run for Trubisky, I'm like, you've been stuck with Big Ben for so long, you forgot that that's even an option. And you've got a guy who's 26, 27, 28, and I'm not being an asshole, but he's kind of expendable.
Yeah, very expendable.
Why aren't you just saying, go? You know what I mean? Because he can do that. And when I saw Tomlin not making those kinds of calls with a guy who was literally just in the Josh Allen offense.
Yeah.
Like, when he came in for that week 17 game, like, he ran it well. Trubisky can do that stuff. He was not asked to.
Right.
And that's when I got scared. And I was like, uh-oh, like, does Mike Tomlin not know how to coach what Trubisky can do? Because we know Trubisky can't throw the ball well consistently. He can sometimes, but he can run. Never asked him to run. And that was when I was like, okay, maybe Tomlin doesn't know what to do with these guys. And that's when I got scared. Because I honestly I still think that Trubisky would probably be the better option if he was played properly. And we saw he came in a couple weeks ago and he was a fucking beast. Boom. And he can do that. He can do that. But it was just, I don't know. It's so I'm a little worried about Pickett because I don't know if the coaching staff they have there right now is set up to develop a guy like that and to do that even.
I think he's going to be just fine. I'm more on the bullish side on Kenny Pickett. I'll say this: I think that no matter who you had in there, like I'm not a Trubisky guy, but I do agree with you that he's mobile, and that's probably utilizing him the best way if you run him. And I'll say this: I think that part of the reason that it didn't come to fruition or he didn't run it more is I don't think any one of these quarterbacks that's not a very good one is capable of playing well when an offensive line is that putrid, which to wrap things up and get off Kenny Pickett, that should be that much more impressive to you for Justin Fields because it's a similar offensive line situation and Justin Fields is balling. So imagine if the weaponry gets better, if the offensive line is improved. He is doing all this with nothing.
Yeah, Justin Fields is a beast, and you're right. Kenny Pickett, there's only upside available to him. You know what I mean? Like he's been playing at his floor, so that does give me some hope. But we'll just have to see if the Steelers can get it back on track offensively. So,
yep, I'm with you there.
All right, well, we've been right around an hour. It's been awesome hanging out with you, Adam.
Yeah, man, definitely. I'm glad you had me on, man.
Absolutely. I'm sure I'll be talking to you more in the chats we got going on in the Discords and stuff. You want to plug your pod so that the ladies and gentlemen can go check that out in your channel?
Yeah, absolutely. IDP Army, appreciate you having me on, taking the time to listen to me with Jordan here. It was a pleasure. You can catch Mike and I stuff, South Harmon. We have the YouTube page. It is /McNutted. But if you just search South Harmon Fantasy Football, you'll be able to find us there. We do a lot of stuff on YouTube. You can find me. That's my Twitter handle and my TikTok handle there, ATM4D Chess. You can check me out there. But one of the big things I want to plug is probably our biggest exposure platform. One of my favorite things to do, we do the 4D Chess Dynasty podcast. You can get that over at the Destination Debbie Radio, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever. Go to Destination Debbie Radio, and you'll see every Friday, 4D Fridays comes out. Mike and I chop it up and tell you our dynasty strategies of that week. So those are the plugs you can find me at. Appreciate it, and looking forward to catching some of you guys later.
Absolutely. Shout out to the DD crew. We love them over there. Dynasty, Best Ball, and IDP. That is the future of fantasy football. If you're here with us, you are doing one of those three things, and you're probably doing it just a little better than mediocre. So that means you're making money.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the IDP thing, Jordan, at some point we'll have to try to get a collab going on our channel because I know a lot of the guys are asking Mike and I questions on IDP, and we don't have the answer. So we could use Jordan Rains bringing the IDP Army stuff over to South Harmon too.
Absolutely. Would love to do that. I'm always, like I said, I'm always willing to talk any kind of football, the culture of football, the game of football, the media of football, the fantasy of football, the offense, the defense, the whole thing. We do it all. So thanks again for your time, Adam. Everybody, like this video. Appreciate you guys for being here. And I will be back tomorrow with the rankings Q&A. I know the Offensive Points podcast is probably being uploaded literally as I'm about to close this show down. And see you guys in the Underdog Lobby later this week. And adios.
Peace.